since our last show, the away jersey was unveiled. So just like the home shirt, it is supposedly inspired by the Olympic Games in Barcelona in 1992, 30 years ago. I don't remember that. I was just a bit too young. But of course, being a big fan of basketball, the immediate effects were felt in the United States of America as the NBA went from just being kind of okay to, in the mid 90s, Michael Jordan. It was everything in that whole situation. So anyway, Barcelona, the Olympics in Spain. Also, I want to say too, the Olympic Games in '92 was one of the rare times where, as I've said before in the podcast, a city has come out on the other side of the Olympic Games and not said that was an entirely insane waste of our money and time, and it was just a disaster for the cities that have it. That was not the case necessarily in Barcelona. So it is a gold top, bottom, and socks with a symmetrical half map of the city. The sleeves are also multicolored to represent the colors of the 5 Olympic rings. And the gold is, well, obviously for the gold medals, which is what the athletes strive to win. So, I'll start, Domagoj. I think I like it. I want to see it in person, and I definitely want to see it with 11 players on the field wearing it. I feel like I'm always much harsher with the pictures, and that stuff. But I as far as the 3 jerseys this season, to me, I think the home jersey, I think it's better than what we've seen for 3 seasons now. I mean, again, I said it last week, I'm not totally over the moon about it, but I think it's good. I think it's, again, better than what we've seen recently. The gold, I think, is one of my favorite away jerseys recently. And that third kit, they went to gray instead of sticking to their laurels and their history and sticking with the white with the St. George cross. But the league third jersey looks good to me too, especially, again, if they're going to go gray and we don't have to do the white conversation, and we could just have that as being a separate, ode to the St. St. Geordie, if you will. So yeah, what do you think of the gold jersey?
I definitely like it. The thing is, with away jerseys and the third kits, we always seem to kind of get good away kits and good third kits, just not the home kits. That's the big thing for the last couple of years. Yeah, I don't remember. I haven't bought a Barca kit, one of the new ones, in years now, because I just didn't like them. Well, not the home ones, at least.
2018 Iniesta for me. It's been almost 5 years. Yeah.
Oh wow! Yeah. So there you go. Yeah, I'm the same. I think this one that I have on me. This is the thing. This is Rakitich's last season. This is Rakitich's in the back, actually. Fun fact. I think that was the last one I bought. Well, I bought more of them, but I always buy the old ones because the new ones are kind of, I don't know. I don't feel it anymore. But this golden one, yeah, I like it. I like the golden one. I like the third one. The home one, as I said, it's an improvement, but I'm not really fully into it just yet. We'll see how it looks in the pitch. That's a big thing, because sometimes the marketing looks good. They look good in the pictures, and then they come out in the field and it's horrible, or it's the other way around. They look good they look bad on the picture, and then they look good on the pitch. So hopefully this year we'll get a bit of both, good on the pictures and good on the pitch. That would be the dream. I'm just waiting for a good home kit. That's what I'm waiting for. It feels like it's been ages since last we had like a good solid home kit, and I feel like it matters to the fans as well. Maybe not the players as much. Maybe they always say it's good, they have to, but to the fans, it just
they give the thumbs up.
Yeah,
I
love those videos where they get the jerseys for the first time. They're like, wow, this is really good. And you can see in their eyes like it's horrible.
Well, as my wife can attest, or family can attest, whenever the Christmas season or when my birthday when I was younger, unfortunately these eyes don't do the same thing, right? They always say watch the eyes and the smile. And I felt like when I saw Ronald Araujo, I think he's very much the same gift receiver as I am, where if I like it, you're going to know I like it. And if I don't, and if it didn't work out, I'm so sorry. But my eyes they tell the truth. So it's just the way it is. So, okay, speaking of Barcelona in 1992, let's keep this moving. Sergi Barjuan will be staying at the club, but he'll no longer be the Barca B coach. Instead, Rafa Marquez will take over. He was involved in Atlas's youth academy. That was his original boyhood club that he went back to finish his career, where he retired. And so, again, I think he was a youth academy director there for a bit. And then I think they called him a sporting president, I think is the official terminology. So technically not a manager, but as they say, your first job has to come sometime, I guess. And this will be it. Barcelona Athletic, which I had to continue to work on, because I'm so used to saying Barca B for all these years. So he is technically also was currently a youth coach with Alcala, a small club in Madrid that to plug a YouTube video that's coming out in a few days time. I went all the way back in the history of Catalan football and whatever. And I went through a lot of different of those small teams that have been around. And Alcala was one that I even, when looking up Rafa Marquez again, had to relook up. So again, a very tiny club, and who knows how much experience that was and how useful that experience was. So obviously I have no idea how he'll do. Truthfully, due to those salary cuts I spoke about last week, we can't expect really anything from Barca B next season because it'll be full of basically juvenile U19s, and then 20-year-old players. So I'm really interested to see what Marquez though does with players like Chadi Riyad and Diego Almeida, the two promising center backs, and the defensive midfielder Marc Casado. In particular, those three players I've circled as, hey, if he can teach them some things they need to know that are going to be useful for the next level, maybe they can get a few appearances in the Copa del Rey or whatever. So if it's just those three plus Ilaša Komáš, if those four take a step towards the first team next year for potentially the year after or 2 years after that, then I think the campaign would kind of be almost considered a success for me. Again, the results don't really matter when the team is that young. I want to keep reminding people for that. And then lastly on Marquez, I mentioned in passing 4 years ago that he was put on the USA Treasury Department's blacklist for money laundering, part of this scandal, right? And I didn't do my job as a podcast host and mentioning that since then, he has won a ton of legal battles and has been removed from said blacklist as of September of 2021. So even when I was making my top 50 now 2 years ago, that turned into a top 75 at Barca Legends, I didn't really think about him for that list. So I probably should have, right? Like when I looked at it again, he made less than 200 official appearances, but he made almost 250 unofficial or total appearances for Barcelona. He won the Champions League, was a really, really good player, an important time for the club. And, it felt like at the time that Mascherano had his spot on that 75 list. But, I should probably take somebody from a previous era off for Marquez because, he's right there. And I definitely should be another one of those names that I revisit. Especially, we're going to see. If Laporta and Xavi again, they played with him, and he was an important signing for Laporta. So you understand that with Xavi in charge and Laporta the president, his legend status, if you will, is going to be amplified just a bit, right? At the present time, and me as a growing up like in the USA, obviously Rafa Marquez was a villain many, many, many times in my childhood. But that said, yeah, he was a really good player, and. I don't have too many other thoughts because I think this is really cut and dry, and we just don't know, right? The unknown is kind of what makes this a simplified move. But what we did know was that Sergio Busquets probably should not have still been in charge of Barca B. That's 100%.
Oh, that's 100% because the work that he's been doing, all he's done, it's non-existent because Barca B or Barca Athletic, they're all about developing talent, right? All about producing players for the first team, and I don't think that we've seen anyone really improve or develop that much under him, or at least not, I would say, significantly enough to be considered a success. So anything that we get after him should be an improvement. Should be. I hope it will be. And whether Rafa Marquez can do a good job or not remains to be seen, as you've said. But I'm confident that he will at least, he will give it a shot. So we'll see how it goes. As for Rafa Marquez, the player, yes, I absolutely agree. I loved him when I was a kid. And it's for Laporta, it's all about the connections, all about the relationships that he has with ex-players, ex-staff members. That's how things work at Barcelona. You don't get a job if you don't have a history with the club, and he has a good history with the club, a successful history with the club. So I guess that kind of makes sense, and I'm not surprised that he would get the job. Whether he's qualified, whether he has the skills necessary, that remains to be seen. But as I said, at this point it feels like any change would be a good change and a welcome change, because Barca B have been struggling. Both, the results don't really matter that much, as we always say they shouldn't matter that much. Of course, it's good to win, it's good to be competitive, it's good to be going up. But if the players don't develop, if the players are kind of stagnating and don't really get closer to the first team, then what's the point, right? That's the main goal of Barca B or any of the youth ranks, is just to produce players who can one day step into the first team and do a job there. And I feel like there are potentially good players in the academy. There are players that have high ceilings as you've mentioned, a couple of them, and there are many more that could make the step up under the right guidance, and then someone who could guide them and help them make those final steps and kind of finally reach the first team. And because there's so much talent and there's so many players that we should be looking at, and especially in these times when Barca cannot really splash the cash for the big signings in the market, why not then trust the academy? That's what we've been doing for years, and it's been successful. I feel like people often think that the academy will always produce next Xavi, next Iniesta. That's not going to happen. Well, maybe it happens once in a lifetime or twice in a lifetime, but we still have talents that can be useful, and not every academy player needs to be a superstar. That's also the big thing. They can be utility signings, let's call them signings, promotions, like Sergio Roberto, for example. He's not really people say he's bad, but he's he's a good example of how a player can be useful even though he's not a top tier player. Maybe he's way past his usefulness at this point, I'll give you that, but at certain points he was useful. We needed him, he stepped up. And that's what the academy can do. It can provide players who can step up and help you out when you need them the most. So hopefully Rafa Marquez can help us, help the players reach that one point.
Well, yeah, I want to be clear too about the Xavi Iniesta stuff, which is always interesting. That I think the way that they came up through the academy and into the first team is different than what the current generation expected to do. Because there's a difference between Rafa Marquez getting them prepared for first team football, because first team football is different than first team football Barcelona. And in the days of Iniesta and Xavi, you look at them when they were 18 through 21 for both of them. They took their lumps. Xavi was booed, thought about leaving. Iniesta was halfway out the door, of course, when he was in the academy and having trouble being homesick and all that, sure. But I mean, by and large, when he was even breaking into the first team, he was so close to that Rangers to Scotland loan. And if he had taken that loan, who knows where his career winds up after that. But both those guys stayed. They took their lumps. And again, I think Xavi will say first big season, he was 26 years old. I mean, that's how long it took before Xavi was who we knew him to be, before he really did kick it into, we'll say, legendary status. And Iniesta, similar thing. I think he was 24 when he really took that step forward, right? And so these players, we just mentioned Rodri and Almeida, center backs at Barcelona are 20 years old. Like, you have to be not only ready for first team football, but if you break into Barca's first team, it's because you're of the caliber to win trophies. And so Gavi breaking in, again, that's why these guys are so rare, that he broke in, and same thing with Ansu, that they broke in and they were ready to win trophies from day one. And so again, I want to remind people that the expectation is not even to be prepared for first team football. It is to be prepared to win trophies at a major club, which is a lot to ask of an 18, 19, 20-year-old. So again, just be patient with these kids. And as I said, even if they don't pop up until 2022 or 21, 22, even like an Alex Callado, right? Like, his development was stalled a little bit, but he's coming back now at 23, and he's still, I want to remind people, only 23, which again is 3 years younger than when Xavi really came good, a year younger than when Iniesta came good. And I'm not comparing Callado to them. I'm just saying that the path was different back then. There was a lot longer release. Now you got to be 17 and ready to win trophies. You got to be 18 and ready to win trophies. And that's a tough thing to do. And speaking of winning trophies, and one of the things that helps to do that is when you're a fully financed club, because you get to bring in good players. So that's a fun transition as we speak. A TV rights deal could be signed as soon as tomorrow. They would really ideally need to get this done before July 1st. That is the plan. So of all the business happening today, Gerard Romero, of course, is going off for a while. But of all the things that are happening with player movement, that TV rights deal is the one thing that we are pretty sure is going to be signed in the next 24 hours. So obviously it's a big day because it's the day that contracts expire. So that lever, if you will, that palanca has to be pulled at that moment. So this would be 10% of the TV rights to a company called Sixth Street, as this would be the first level, the first palanca, as I said, the lever, and then Sixth Street, that company, if you've never heard of them, I hadn't had to look them up. They have partnerships with Real Madrid, the New York Yankees, and then they own 20% of the San Antonio Spurs. And I was like, oh, that's why I've heard of them. They're a partnership in the San Antonio Spurs. So they're not really new to the sports game, which is a good thing to me. So I don't really have anything more on that at all, Domagoj. But clearly, I mean, that's the thing that has to be done, right? As unexciting as a TV rights deal being signed is, this is the thing that I think is actually most important, more than the transfer business.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it has to be done because Barca are in the red. If that's what we're led to believe, but that is true. And I think that if it helps, sure. I think Laporta knows what he's doing. I hope that he knows what he's doing. He's a businessman first and foremost, a politician. So I hope that he knows what he's doing, because all of these deals that we're making, it feels like we're playing with fire a bit. There's nothing free in the world of business, so we always have to give up something. Something will cost us. You don't get such amounts of money, life-saving money, and money that will help you with the transfers and help you sign superstars and stuff. It just there has to be a cost, and we are obviously gonna we'll be paying for it. We will get the money, but we'll be paying for it for the money and other ways. So I feel like as long as Laporta knows what he's doing, as long as he's aware of the risks and aware of the chips that we have to put on the table, I'm fine with it, because I'm not really familiar with it. I don't pretend to be an expert in business and money and all that stuff. So I'm just going to leave that for him and the club to sort. But if it helps, and if they are 100% sure that it will work and that it has to be done, then I guess all that we can do is just trust them at this point.
Yep. You just have to trust on that. That those are the deals that it sounds odd again, that those were the deals that he, as the president, was put in charge to make. The big decisions that will affect the club's financial future for 10 years, 15 years. Like, those are the ones that are going to come down on him, the way that, we don't really mention Carlos Tusquets or anybody else who is involved in Bartomeu's world. Josep Bartomeu, that's the name you always say. That's the name that we'll remember for making either a mockery of the club or doing the right thing that saves the club, if you will. And it's really one or the other, right? It's a fork in the road, and you're either on the path of salvation or you're in trouble indefinitely, or you continue on this really bad path. Because the guys he's brought in, that being Matteo Alemany more than any other, those are the ones that are brought in, and those are the guys that do the scouting and are in charge of bringing in players and speaking with agents and the contracts. And of course, Laporta is a part of those meetings, and Xavi is a part of those meetings, like he was on Monday with Dembele's camp in Sissoko. But our main focus, as I said, is going to be the Raphinha Dembele drama. We'll get that in a second. And of course, there is the Frenkie de Jong stuff, Lewandowski stuff, all hanging in the background. But it seems like the first domino for Barca this summer may be Clement Lenglet leaving on loan to Tottenham. So, I mean, Lenglet being the first, well, not say domino, but it's almost one of those things where between Umtiti and Braithwaite, Pjanic, it's just going to be nice to see somebody leave. We're just going to be celebrating, good on you, Lenglet. And the irony is, of the group that I just mentioned, Lenglet is the most useful player. Useful player.
Yeah, he is. I've always felt like he gets unnecessary hate. I get that he makes a lot of mistakes in the box. I'm not sure if that's just a mentality thing, is the concentration or what it is, but he always seems to have a mistake in him. That's true. You cannot really escape that fact. But I always liked him because there was one period when he was super reliable. He was like a good Umtiti replacement, a left-footed center back. It's rare. And for Barca to have someone who could be reliable in that position and be a good passer of the ball and still be decent defensively. And when he's on his game, he was good defensively. I didn't mind him. I was happy with how he played for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden he started just to fall off the cliff. And now it's come to the point where he's a big risk to have in your back line. And I get that. And I get that he needs to be moved on. But I always felt like, yes, with all that being said, he still kind of had, he was still useful at points. He was still a good rotational option that can play the ball out of the back, that can find your priority targets and when they're being marked and whatnot. And he's a left-footed center back. That's a big thing. We forget that, because our targets, for example, Koundé, he's also a right-footed center back as well. We have Mika who could slot in. I always thought that if Lenglet is so unreliable, why not give Mika a shot? That was my big point back then. But it feels like with all the center backs that we've been targeting, that some have to leave. Umtiti has to leave. Lenglet has to leave. If we're going to have new center backs coming in, someone just has to leave. And then Lenglet has some marketability, I guess. He can be he'll be loaned out for sure because of the wages. But I feel like it's easier to shift him out than someone like Umtiti because of the injuries, because of the fitness and stuff. So ultimately it's a good thing, but I do feel like he's been a bit of an underrated, maybe overly criticized player in that squad that obviously deserves some of the criticism, but at the same time, he's been decent for us. I would say that he's been decent when he was at his, when he was on it. He was actually quite good.
Well, it's a shame that he was born in northern France and not in the Pyrenees Mountains, right over the border, which would technically be Basque Country. Because if I'm Langley, I'd actually want to go to Athletic Club and rejoin Ernesto Valverde in the same way that if I'm Ricky Puig, I'm calling up Quique Setien. But at this point, I mean, Quique Setien is not managing, but Eder Sarabia, the assistant coach, is the current coach at FC Andorra. So if I'm Ricky Puig, I mean, I think that's too low of a level to try to restart my career, right? Like if I'm Ricky Puig, but again, it's like for me, again, if I'm one of those players, even Samuel Titi, I'm again calling Lyon and saying, do you need me to be there? Because if I'm one of those players, I'm saying, who is the manager? Who are the clubs? Who are the people that were around me that are going to help me restart my career? Because again, a guy like Langley is still technically in his athletic prime. He's like 27, 28. So he still has a lot of time left to go, especially as a center back. He'll probably age gracefully, we think. But yeah, I mean, moving forward in Barcelona's system, especially when Xavi came in and it once more put such a heavy emphasis on those center backs to be able to play the ball and be the ones who break things down. He's never had that skill set. I think, you know what I mean? Like he could always do so he can only do so much for me, and especially in Valverde's system, that was the most he was going to do. And so it's no surprise that his best season was the last one for Valverde. And then once Setien came in, there was one or two mistakes, and then it started to not make as much sense. And even under Koeman and Xavi, it doesn't make much sense. So anyway, speaking of making sense, though, under Xavi, time for that right winger discussion real quick here. At the latest, it seems like, I mean, and then Domagoj, you can correct me on any of this because again, it's changing by the minute. So if you have something new that you've realized and looking at your phone in the last few seconds. So the latest is it seems like Dembele's contract will expire tomorrow, that being June 30th, which I explained last week isn't ideal because it would go against the books and the 4-1 as a new contract and not a renewal, which would not be good. So he doesn't have any offers at the number that Sissoko, that being his agent, wants, and Barca have even lowered the number in the latest offer. Again, it's not reported, because all it's reported is that Sissoko is like, oh, we have all these other offers, blah, blah, blah. But he would already be gone. He would already have been holding up the jersey if he had other offers that were what they wanted. And I mean, the numbers that we're seeing are insane. Like I said last week that I think Barca should be offering somewhere between 8 to 10, which would put him right around the salary structure of Ansu and right kind of in that fourth, fifth, sixth most important player on the team spot. I mean, even fourth before someone like Lewandowski were to come in or Silva, or whoever it may be. So right around that area there. And yet I'm seeing it's reported like 20 is a number that Sissoko is still asking for, which is just absolutely breaking my brain, right? It doesn't make any sense. On the other side of that, though, speaking of too much money, it's also being reported from the Chelsea side of things that Chelsea have broadly agreed personal terms with Raphinha with an offer of 5 years at 134K per week, which are pretty high wages. It's not insane. Like those wages actually are not insane. Remember that Barca have multiple players over 200K a week, right? But those are the problems. So 134 though, that still means you got to be one of the top 3 to 4 players, 5 players on the team. Again, a reminder of that. So they are still aiming, that being Chelsea, to complete the signing, despite Deco, again, a former Barcelona player, holding these late talks for Barcelona, who at the moment it seems like are trying to hijack that deal. But the question really comes down between those two, right? It's like, as they two wrongs don't make a right. Neither of those seem like the right choice, but it seems like Barcelona, when the dust settles, they are desperately hoping that it's one of those two players for the right number, right? And it would be absurd if they had to overpay for Raphinha and let Dembele go because of the way the negotiations went, right? But at this point, you just have to cut your losses on Dembele and then overpay for Raphinha. Like that doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't feel comfortable, right? And I think we're getting to a point now here, Domagoj, that either Barcelona winds up with neither, and now they have nobody for that right wing, and we're going to be saying Abde's name quite a lot for better or worse next season, or they're going to have to either. I don't know how. I just feel like biting the bullet with Dembele. It feels like a waiting game, but now they've waited too long. Not being Barcelona, but Dembele's camp. They've waited so long. There are no other offers, and now your contract is going to expire, and you're hurting Barca even more by having that contract expire and having to sign a new deal instead of renewing the way that it would have worked for all parties. And then again, Raphinha, it's just, that's tough. Like they should let him go to Chelsea at this point for 65 million, 75 million, right? Like we're talking about Frenkie de Jong numbers.
Exactly.
I don't think Raphinha is that. That's not what he is.
I don't know. I don't think that he's a 70 million player. I just don't see it. And we shouldn't. I always said that if we were going to splash the cash for one player, it should be Raphinha, but not 70 million. That was just too much. The thing is, the ideal scenario, I would say, is still renewing Dembele, because people don't realize that, well, Dembele is still much better than Raphinha, I would say. I still a much better player than Raphinha. And I feel like people expect Raphinha to come in and kind of replicate what Dembele has been doing and add to it even more. And I just don't think that would happen. And on the other side of the coin, like, Dembele is so unique, not just his profile in the squad, but on the market as well, because there's just not so many right wingers that are at the top level, and that can play the way he plays, and provide, the skill set that he has. The market is so dry, and that if you want a player who's ready and established, which Barca clearly won't, because if you want a project player, you have Abde, you have Ilias, and players like that, but they want someone who's established, who can replace Dembele immediately. And looking beyond Raphinha, there's not too many players who fit that bill. But at the same time, if you're going to overpay for Raphinha, you might as well just give Dembele more money and then keep him, because he's the superior player in my mind.
This is kind of setting up for failure here with this question, but who do you think is older, Dembele or Raphinha? Obviously, I'm giving the answer by asking this question this way.
Well, if I was just going to spitball, I'll probably say Raphinha.
Raphinha is older. Yeah, Raphinha is. It's only by 5 or 6 months, but yeah, Raphinha is the older player. So again, a reminder that while I was just saying this thing about Xavi and Iniesta just before, Raphinha is a bit of a late bloomer, and it's been basically 1.5 seasons that we've seen this level from him. So it is a bit worrying in that way, where Dembele has been this slow burn since he was 19 years old, from 19 to 25. We waited 6 years for him to come good, and he's finally come good under Xavi. And Xavi really is the main piece in that whole thing, right? Like, the only reason I think Dembele is hanging on is the fact that Dembele wants Barca, and Xavi wants him at Barca. And it's Barca who don't want him at that number, which is totally fair. And it's his camp, his agent, Sissoko in particular, that either doesn't want him at Barca, or wants too much from it, and wants Premier League money. So yeah, it seems like if football was just the romantics and football, Dembele would be playing under Xavi, because that makes all the sense in the world. But it's not. Again, this is just such a stark reminder that this is all more of a business than it really is about what happens on the field. Truly, like, it's such a shame. And Barca fans have been living in this for the last few years now, that regardless of what you hope happens on the field, we've got to be talking about what's happening off the field. And in particular, we've got to be talking about what's happening in Catalan banking accounts and French banking accounts, because that's the thing that's moving and shaking in the club, especially over the summertime.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the figures that Sissoko was asking at first, well, that was reported a while back, that was just crazy. At 20 million, I just wouldn't go that. I wouldn't go anywhere near that. No, I've seen some reports of about 7-8 million, and I was like, okay, we can do that.
That's the number.
Yeah, that was apparently the initial number, or was it a bit lower than the initial offer, or the latest offer, sorry, that was on the table, and that was Dembele probably refused that offer, or his agent refused it, and then Barca lowered it or something. I'm not sure.
It went down to 6.
Down to 6.
Yeah, it was like almost down to 6, because it was, hey, you're gonna act like this, so you have no leverage here. Like, Barcelona are making that play now that they have the leverage, and saying, oh, you wanted a new offer, because that was what it was. So it was Hardline said, we're not going to come back to the table until they have a new offer, and so they came with a new offer, but it was even lower, which was lower. It feels like the negotiations are over, right? At that point, like, if you come to the table and offer me less, it feels like this is over. But once again, it's like this agent, not even it's because Dembele wants to stay, Xavi wants them to stay. It just feels like Sissoko has no leverage. But again, Barca have very little leverage, because if one of these Premier League clubs picks up the phone and says, hey, we have 10 million euros or 12, 13, 14 million euros burning a hole in our pocket, we'd love to bring in Dembele at the 11th hour, excuse me, hey, we're Newcastle, let me introduce myself. And, then he's gone overnight, right? And that's all it took.
But it's so weird, because you would think that if there was someone who had that money, well, there are obviously clubs that have that money, but if there was someone who wants Dembele, they would have called already. I mean, at this point, he would have been gone if there was someone waiting for his signature. I mean, he's a free agent. All you have to do is come close, or give a better offer than Barca, which isn't that difficult, because Barca are broke. So I guess I guess he really doesn't have any offers or any offers that would satisfy him or clubs that would satisfy him. So I guess his main leverage, I would say, is that his profile really is unique, and the market for the right wingers or left-footed right wingers, well, he's both. He's ambidextrous, so there we go. But the market for those kind of players is so dry. And I feel like Raphinha would have been the ideal replacement. He's not as good, but he would have been the ideal established player to come in and replace Dembele if he was to leave. But if he's so expensive, then just give Dembele a bit more money and just make him stay, I guess. And if he doesn't have any other offers, I always feel like he would stay in the end, but I don't know, the whole game. I understand the fans and their frustrations that with Dembele, because yes, I've been frustrated myself, and I don't think that he deserves or that he's warranted that kind of money that was initially talked about, the 20 million stuff. That's just ridiculous. But I do feel like he is a unique player, and he's a top player that we need to have such a player in our team. And if he can maintain that form, all he has to do is remain consistent. And the thing with his consistency was the injuries, because he was never going to be consistent with so many injuries. As long as he stays fit, I feel like he will perform. He may have those dips that he usually has, but I feel like he's going to be on the up, I feel like. And whoever keeps hold of him or gets him this summer, it will get a good player. And for Barca, unfortunately, it has to be at a reasonable price, because we're still broke, and we're planning to sign players who will cost a lot of money. So I guess that's the trick.
Yeah, and another one of the big factors here about the Raphinha stuff, like it always feels kind of shady that Barca is a team that's quote unquote trying to hijack the deal. It's what they did with Frenkie de Jong and PSG. And, I think there are those who are proud and boasting their chests out. And I think the club does this a bit too, that says, hey, we're Barcelona. As much as you say that we're dead in the water, that we're done, that we've had the coffin, the funeral, the procession, it's over. Barcelona are taking a step back, and Real Madrid are the all-conquering side, and there's Premier League, and Barca are just going to be second rate. For all those that say that, the other part is that Lewandowski is willing to force his way out of Bayern Munich to come to Barcelona. That you have, again, Raphinha, who could have, I think, was on the verge of Arsenal. It was pretty much done and dusted. Now on the verge of Chelsea, who can afford him at the number that Leeds United wants. And yet him and his agent Deco are still fighting to come to Barcelona, and that's the club he wants. And they're even Frenkie de Jong. Let's do Frenkie de Jong now too. It's a similar thing where Frenkie de Jong, Man United, the latest on Frenkie now is that Man United and Barca agreed a deal for de Jong for 85 million euros. A guaranteed 65 and then 20 million euros in add-ons, many of which I've heard are rather easy to hit metrics for him. Then Man United, the thing they have to do left is to agree personal terms with Frenkie de Jong, which in this case may be the hardest part if he doesn't want to go. But, unlike Umtiti and Braithwaite and Pjanic and Coutinho before them, as I mentioned, de Jong is a starter in either team from day one of the preseason. Yeah. And maybe less of a starter at Barca, to be honest, but still living in Barcelona, where he always said he wanted to be, a reminder as well. So until Xavi says, I don't want him, I don't know if it has to be public, but until he says to Frenkie de Jong, hey, ideally it's going to be Busquets, Pedri, and Gavi. That's what I want to see. Until Xavi sits down with him and has that conversation or says that publicly, I don't see why Frenkie would agree to leave at this point. It's really not on him, once again, especially with these levers being, it was the same thing with the Dembele situation and even the Haaland rumors back then. That if Barca are going to be able to pull these levers now for their financial picture, then if I'm Frenkie de Jong, I'm saying, like, why me? Like, why am I the one at this point? Do you still really feel like you need to go? Is it really just because you want to go after Bernardo Silva, right? Like at this point with those levers being done, can they afford to renew? Can't they renew Gavi, renew Dembele, bring in Lewandowski for, it might be up to 50, but if he's your big signing and then the rest are free transfers, then why is Frenkie de Jong leaving if that's the case, right? If there's just one guy they're going to spend money on, we know that the left back spot is pretty much, it's just going to be Jordi Alba again, and maybe this is the backup next season. But we also expect that, and then I would start to throw away the Koundé idea, right? Is it Koundé or Frenkie de Jong? Like we've had that conversation too. But yeah, if Frenkie doesn't want to leave, again, you can boast that Barcelona, it's a testament to them. It's a testament to the city when it comes to the Pjanices, again, of the world that don't want to live in that city, sure. But Frenkie wants to also play for FC Barcelona. And the pull of playing for that club in that city, it goes a long way in the global transfer world. It matters. It matters.
It really matters, especially when you compare it to where he's supposed to go. You're trading Spain and Barcelona for Manchester. Well, I've been to Manchester. It's a nice city and all, but it's not Barcelona. It's not as sunny, not as warm. And I feel like, yeah, for Frenkie especially, I feel like when he says that this is his dream club, this is his dream city to live in, and the club to play for, I believe that. I feel like that's why it's so difficult to let go of him. Sportingly, you can kind of make sense of it because yes, he's had his dips. He's not been this world-breaking player that we expected him to be at all times. Sometimes he has been, but he's been inconsistent with his dips and all. But it feels like we're all emotionally attached to him at some level because he seems genuine, he seems nice, he seems lovable, he is lovable, and that's why this is so difficult. But at the same time, if there's a good offer, and there has to be a good offer. Like Barca, if they're going to sell Frenkie de Jong, they have to sell him for good money because we cannot keep this trend of buying players for high prices and then selling out players for low prices. That's just not the way we should be doing.
No, you can't pay 60. You cannot in any universe pay 65 million for Raphinha and do 65 million guaranteed plus 20 million for Frenkie. Like those numbers just don't add up to me. It doesn't. No way.
Exactly. Yeah. The only universe in which you sell Frenkie is if you have an offer that is legitimately good, like satisfactory. I'm not saying like bunch of add-ons. Just give us the money, and that's it. And then that money needs to be spent well. I feel like if Barca go into the market looking for a replacement for Frenkie de Jong, if you're not going to find another Frenkie de Jong, you have to find a different player, be it for a different position, or maybe if it's midfield, it has to be a different kind of player. And I see, Bernardo Silva, obviously a quality player, and he would fit Xavi's system. He would fit a midfield three. He would also fit Xavi's kind of box midfield. Also, he fits that as well. But as you've said, there are positions on the pitch on our squad that would need to be strengthened. If we had the money for Frenkie de Jong, then we have to use it well. And I feel like, is this a sporting decision by the board? Is it just financial decision by the board? I don't know. I'm not really sure what to say on that. If Frankie is to be sold, we need to make sure that we get the right money, and we need to make sure that we're going to use that money well, which is two things I'm not sure that we're going to get from this deal, which is the worrying part, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, right. And again, I want to say, Bennett, but the finances again, that the TV rights deal and some of these other levers are for contending with the short-term debt that Barcelona as a club do currently have, which is in a sense separate from the fair play. That selling Frenkie, getting rid of his wages off the books, would still have a lot to do with the fair play limitations set forth by La Liga. So a reminder too that we'll say different levels of pain that Barcelona are in. It's different places where that money's going in this instance, and this is more about that transfer number coming in for financial fair play, and also getting his wages off the books again to help with salary limits, as opposed to again what the club, that being FC Barcelona, owes for whatever they owe Liverpool for Felipe Coutinho left, whatever they owe for a million different other things, right? That they've taken out. So with this whole thing going on too, this is our final little note here. As all of this is happening, we're also starting to hear some chirping from Ronald Koeman and Tony Fresha, Victor Font, which I don't think, people are conspiratorially saying that it's all coordinated. I don't think it's coordinated at all. I just think it happened to be a matter of coincidence that multiple guys have had especially with the Barca financial year ending. I think it's no surprise that certain journalists that are connected to those managers or those figures are putting a microphone in front of their faces just as the financial year of Barcelona is ending. And especially when Barca might be getting some bad news, or when all the dreams are not going to come to fruition, obviously, with the situation that Barca are in. So it's no coincidence. Again, that I think is the only coincidence, that the time of the year befits the former powers to be, or the guys who never got to be, in Font's case and Fresha's case, to have a microphone in front of them.